Trevor Story is primed for a breakout 2025 season. I'll tell you exactly why on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut, now known as Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate, and also the current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And it's all completely free, so you really have nothing to lose but to continue to check it out because Locked On is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about Game Time later on today's show. But more importantly, Happy New Year. We are officially in 2025, which means that baseball season is right around the corner. Only a month and a half or so at this point until spring training starts for the Red Sox and other teams around the league, which is very exciting. I know for myself, I've been counting down the days and I am looking forward to another great season of baseball and hopefully a better one for the Boston Red Sox as we get closer and closer to that spring training date. And hopefully the Red Sox are still going to make a couple more moves before the offseason is over because they definitely could use some valuable pieces to add to both their bullpen and the lineup. But we'll have to see what the Red Sox lineup looks like going into opening day. And on today's show, I'm going to be giving a few bold predictions for the 2025 season. Now, I say bold because you might not agree, and that's okay. But this is why I feel this way. I'm going to be diving into all of that today. So, bold take number one for me here is that Trevor Story is going to have a breakout season in 2025. Now, the thing that we have to remember about Story is we know from his past history and track record that he has had success in Major League Baseball earlier on in his career. We have seen him have very strong seasons offensively, and people are wondering, was that only a Coors Field thing, and was he only comfortable hitting there? Because since coming to Boston, he hasn't exactly been up to par offensively with what fans were hoping for. But also, he hasn't really gotten a full season of showcasing what he can do, primarily due to injury. He hasn't really been able to stay healthy in his time in Boston, so that's obviously one thing to keep an eye on here as we move forward is what is his health situation going to look like this upcoming season? And hopefully now that he was able to get himself healthy on a quicker timeline than everybody thought and was able to return late in the season in 2024. Hopefully that carries over into 2025 and he's able to stay healthy, because if he's able to be a guy who is on the field every day, I feel confident that his offensive productivity will come. Because looking at Trevor Story's numbers from 2024, obviously he didn't play in a lot of games because of the injury, only really played in the first few games of the season, in which he was off to a slow start at the plate. Ended the month of April before he got injured with a 226 batting average. Now, granted, that was only April 5th, so they were only about a week into the season when he got that horrific injury. But having the batting average that he did have at that point, obviously that's not very encouraging for fans and for everybody involved with the Red Sox organization, because when they brought this guy here, they signed a guy who they were hoping to see more productivity from. But then you skip to September, because obviously he goes down with a really tough injury in April, misses the majority of the season after that, and then comes back on September 7th and is able to play the rest of the season with the Boston Red Sox, which was good news for everybody at the time, because people didn't think that he was going to come back at all. So when he was ahead of schedule and was able to come back for the last month of the season, that alone is going to give him a leg up going into 2025, is that he was able to come back and perform in the last month of the season as opposed to not performing at all the rest of the year. So then he has his bat a little bit more acclimated as opposed to if he missed the entirety of the rest of the season and had to go into spring training completely cold without having taken any at bats since beginning of April. So that alone is promising going into the upcoming season, but also his batting average at the end of the year was 255. Now, obviously, that's not an eye-popping number either, but if you compare that to his numbers from earlier in the season, as well as his numbers from the last couple of years in Boston as a whole, that's certainly promising for him trending in the right direction. The biggest storyline that we talked about related to him when it came to his numbers earlier on in his career and comparing them to his numbers in Boston, we weren't really seeing a lot of consistency. He was striking out a ton and he wasn't able to really initiate or get the job done as much when he was in his earlier days in Boston, but jumping his batting average up to a 255 showed me a little bit more consistency from him in that last month of the season, because he was able to go out there and he was able to hit a lot better. And let's face it, I mean, the expectation for him right now isn't super high. So if he can switch the narrative of, oh, the Red Sox shouldn't have spent the money on him because he's not able to contribute, that would be huge for the Red Sox. For one, because he's a right-handed bat, and the Red Sox definitely need right-handed productivity in their lineup. I'm hoping they get a right-handed bat during this offseason at some point before the season starts, because that would just help their lineup to look a lot more attractive. But if Story has a big season, he is somebody who can provide versatility from the right hand side because they have a lot of left handed hitters in the lineup. But the reason for me why I feel like he will have a big season in 2025 is because he finished 2024 with seemingly unfinished business. Him waking up at the plate at the end of the season, that's momentum. That's saying, okay, if I had a full season of this, I could have hit better. And he is determined to go into 2025 and show Red Sox fans, now that he's healthy, that he's worth the money that the front office is paying him to be here. So that aspect is very exciting, because for me, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, his numbers only increased throughout the month of September. He didn't really decline at that point. He continued to get his batting average up and was able to maintain a level of consistency really from mid-September on, which is something that we really like to see. He had gotten his batting average up to 260 at one point too in that stretch. So consistency for me was the biggest word that popped into my head that Trevor Story lacked. But the fact that we started to see more consistency from him and him driving in runs in the month of September, now that he's healthy and he'll have a full off season with the Red Sox in which he is healthy, that's going to be a game changer for him going into this upcoming season. And not to mention his defense. It's pretty blatantly obvious that the Red Sox infield defense needs him. They struggled a lot this past year without him. And when they had him to play good defense, they were able to go out there and field the ball really well in the infield. But when he was out, the infield looked very discombobulated. They weren't making a lot of competitive plays, and they were making mistakes and dropping balls a lot to lead to base runners. Having Trevor Story out there makes the infield defense look a lot more coherent and like a unit, and a lot of the plays are more seamless. So they do absolutely need his defense out there. There's no arguing that. His outs above average in 2024 was 2, which basically means how many outs he saved. And for him, his success rate was 74% with 92 attempts in 2024. Now, his success rate in the majority of his time in Major League Baseball has been above a 75%. And that's very good, because his estimated success rate going into 2024 was 72%, but he surpassed that with a 74% success rate. Now, obviously, for him, it's hard to fully compare all of his numbers to past years because he didn't play nearly as much in 2024 and he didn't get as many opportunities to make some nice plays, but it was abundantly clear that the Red Sox infield as a whole was in better shape with him. So it goes without saying how much his defense will help the team in 2025, but I'm looking primarily at his bat, and his numbers all indicate that he was trending in the right direction in the month of September in 2024, which bodes really well for him heading into 2025. Now, of course, this can change because you never know what somebody's health situation is going to look like. But as long as he's able to stay healthy, he could be a key right-handed bat for the Red Sox that they really need heading into this season, because if he has a good season, that's going to be a game changer for the lineup. And to me, Trevor Story is going to have a good season, and he's going to be somebody who proves to be a dark horse, really good hitter for this team in 2025. Now, obviously, there are lots of other players who still have yet to showcase what they can do in 2025, and lots of players who are a question mark heading into the year. So coming up, I'm going to be giving a bold prediction for somebody who has a ton of potential heading into the next season. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming game for UConn basketball using the Game Time app. With Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. I can speak from personal experience to know that Game Time is a great way to save some money on tickets because it's a lot cheaper than other ticketing vendors, and it'll help you to ensure that you're getting the best possible experience. So there's no reason to look at other ticketing vendors anymore when you have Game Time at your fingertips with that Locked On MLB code. So don't hesitate another minute to check that out for the next event you want to attend. Maybe the next event that you want to go to is a Red Sox game in April, or maybe it's a concert, or maybe it's even a playoff football game because football is right around the corner, but for playoffs. But either way, whatever event you want to go to, you can also be getting excited for baseball season and for the Red Sox to be on your screen again come opening day. And believe it or not, now that it's the new year, that's going to come a lot quicker than we think. And we're thinking about, what the Red Sox are going to look like heading into the season, what type of season they're going to have, what types of players they're going to have on the roster, if they're going to continue to change things or add anybody, which I'm hoping that they do. And I've had extensive conversations with several different people about what we want to see the Red Sox do in 2025. But when you look at the roster and the way that they're set up right now, there are a lot of question marks still in terms of certain players and their potential, because they have some players who have a lot of potential to succeed going into this upcoming season, but they have to execute the right way. And one of those players to me is Brayan Bello. It's going to be really important that he has a good season for the Red Sox this year, because what's important with him is that he has been able to utilize his off-speed pitches a little bit, but in 2024 found that they weren't exactly as effective for him as utilizing his fastball as much as he wanted to. So because Andrew Bailey's pitching strategy with these guys has been to utilize their off-speed pitches a lot more, Brayan Bello used that strategy early on in the season, but was finding a lot of inconsistency in terms of his ability to pitch effectively, and he was giving up lots of runs and not really going deeper into games. So then in the second half of the season, I noticed a big difference where he was incorporating his fastball back into his arsenal a lot more, and it allowed for a lot more success for him in the second half of the season than what he had in the first half. And that's something that he's going to have to utilize going into 2025. But I have high expectations for him going into the season. And I believe Brayan Bello is going to have a season in which he continues to work his way up to ace caliber status. Now, he's nowhere close to being an ace right now. He needs to show a lot more consistency to do that. But I think we see Brayan Bello in an elevated capacity in terms of his competitiveness. And I don't think he's any worse than a number 3 starter for the Red Sox in 2025. Because if you look at the rotation right now with Garrett Crochet and Tanner Houck, I would argue that Brayan Bello could have a better season than Walker Buehler, in which case then he's a number 3. And I mean, I'm telling you, if Walker Buehler's your number 4, then that's a good starting rotation that we're looking at here for the Red Sox. And with Brayan Bello, and him having the abilities that he has to showcase his talent level, I believe that Bello could be a star down the road for the Boston Red Sox. Now, the biggest thing that we have to look at with him is his ability to pitch consistently the deeper that he goes into games. Because when he sees a lineup the first time through, typically he looks pretty good. But then when you start to get hitters seeing him more than once, he started to digress a little bit throughout the game. And the Red Sox need pitchers who can give length. And if Bello can give length in 2025, that alone is already an improvement. But length with productivity and consistency, now that would be fantastic. He ended the season with a 4.49 ERA and a 14-8 record. So they did win lots of games when he was starting, even though he wasn't always the most consistent. And he did get some wins in the second half of the season, which was very nice, despite the fact that the bullpen ended up being a disaster in the second half. He was somebody who was on an upward swing in the second half. So here's why I think Bello is primed for a very dominant 2025 season. Because of the fact that he saw what his struggles were early on in 2024 and had an ability to recognize that and then apply it to his game in a way that he could alter what he was doing game to game. And it was noticeable the way that he was going about things a little bit differently in the second half of the season in regards to his arsenal. And because of the fact that he has such a strong fastball, he was able to fool hitters a little bit more with that and get lots of more swings and misses. And the fact that he was able to recognize all of this and figure all of this out, why wouldn't he apply that to the 2025 season? Now, granted, I keep pushing the injuries thing because you don't really obviously know who's going to be healthy or what is going to happen as a result of all of that. But if he does, of course, stay healthy, he's going to be able to apply everything that he utilized in the second half of the season and carry it over into 2025. And that was something that worked for him. We saw a completely different pitcher who was more confident. And I see that confident pitcher going into 2025 with us. That as you examine what he brought to the table in 2024, if we see second half Brayan Bello in 2024 in 2025, then that's going to be a very dominant pitcher. That's going to be a guy who we're talking right after Tanner Houck and probably Garrett Crochet, because he has the natural ability we trust to go to in a game that has a lot of pressure attached to it, like maybe late in the season and there's playoff implications attached to it. And maybe Crochet and Houck both just pitched and they need to figure out who to next start that they can rely on. I would put Bello as that guy as long as he is able to keep himself focused and healthy, because once you figure out that big thing that you were missing, then it's kind of home free. And I feel like Andrew Bailey really helped him to adjust in the second half of the season to say, okay, what we have going for you right now with your arsenal isn't working as effectively as we want it to. So how about we try something else? How about we try throwing in more pitches that you are very comfortable with, so that way then you personally can feel like you're continuing to grow. And that's what I really like about the Red Sox pitching system right now, is that they are very personalized in terms of each individual pitcher catering to their strengths and improving on their weaknesses throughout the season so that they can be a key part of the Red Sox rotation. And that's exactly what I feel like happened here with Bello, was that Andrew Bailey said, okay, you know what? Like, we're going to make a change. We're going to adjust what you're doing so that you can move forward and be more successful. So now we're looking at a season where Bello hopefully is healthy for the whole year and is able to stay consistent. And he was generally healthy in 2024. It's not like he's an injury prone guy where we have to have that type of conversation. But again, it's hard to really know that with pitchers. One thing to keep in mind with Brayan Bello that I'm interested in seeing is generating those swings and misses more and maintaining that command, because command was one of the biggest things that he struggled with this past season. But once he was able to generate that fastball and mix it more back in, he was able to relocate the strike zone a little bit better. And that was a game changer in his performance. So the command issue is something that I'm hoping he doesn't take as much into 2025, and that he's able to grow a little bit more in that regard, because he's sitting here saying, okay, I was able to decrease the walks and the balls and throwing more strikes at that point in the season. So if you even look at his numbers, I mean, he had a 4.81 ERA at home, 4.20 ERA on the road, which is also really good to consider. He struggled significantly more at Fenway, which was kind of par for the course with this Red Sox team, because they, as a club, struggled a lot more at Fenway Park than they did on the road. It was like a completely different team, which was really weird, which also is something that needs to be figured out for 2025, is being able to win home games. But he pitched a lot more confidently away from Fenway. So hopefully he's able to get past those nerves and that pressure of pitching at Fenway in front of the home fans going into 2025. And he's able to improve that home earned run average a little bit more, because then he'll be absolutely golden going into the next season. So he gave up generally the same number of runs. He gave up 41 earned runs at home and 40 on the road. He just was a little bit more consistent on the road. And again, that goes back to consistency and him being able to generate more competitive numbers in regards to having less walks and having more people swing and miss and generating more ground balls. So I have high expectations for him going into 2025. I feel like him really honing in on what he did in the second half of 2024, he'll carry over with him into the upcoming season, and he'll be able to have a year that Red Sox fans are going to be proud of for him. And that could help the Red Sox to produce a season that the fans are also proud of. So coming up, I'm going to be discussing what the 2025 season could look like for the Red Sox in terms of their playoff chances. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's so thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for several other things, like player specific bets, like I mentioned. And all you have to do to take advantage of all these opportunities is visit fanduel.com to join today. That's fanduel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You will not be disappointed if you check out FanDuel. There are so many opportunities to make good money, I promise you. So definitely don't hesitate to check that out today, because it can change your life. For Red Sox fans, obviously, it's been a few years full of frustration. Lots of mediocre play, lots of shying away from wanting to spend money on players who could be a good fit in Boston. I mean, the most recent that is a good example prevalent right now is Alex Bregman, and many people talking about how Boston makes a lot of sense for him and would be a good fit, but the Red Sox seem a little bit hesitant to give him the type of money and years that he would be looking for. So not sure if anything will really come to fruition there. But the last few seasons have really been a lot of them not investing as much in the major league team as we would like for them to. And yes, they have a great farm system with a great future in place, and they want to make sure that they're being cognizant of that when they're going and building their team for the future. But now is the time to be competitive now. And from a fan perspective, we don't want to see the mediocre play anymore. And they went out and they made a couple solid moves to the starting rotation, which, like I just talked about with Brayan Bello, if he has the type of season that I see him having, that's a really solid starting rotation for the Red Sox. And that'll win games. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to hit, because they don't have that strong right-handed bat in the lineup yet, and I'm hoping they acquire somebody like that this offseason. Or again, like I mentioned, Trevor Story has this big year in which he can help balance out the lineup a little bit. But there were lots of strikeouts across the lineup in 2024, and I'm hoping that that gets adjusted in 2025, because you have a group of guys here who want to win and obviously have the grit and the stamina to be able to compete. They just need to change the overall hitting approach of what these guys are doing at the plate, because it was just too many strikeouts at an abnormal rate that really got to me and bugged me in 2024. But here's my bold prediction for the Red Sox 2025 season, that they will make the playoffs. They already are showing, based on the moves that they made this offseason, that they will be an improved team from 2024, because the rotation in 2024, I mean, let's face it, they went into the year with a lot of question marks. And not that there aren't question marks now, but they have guys with a ton of upside now, like Garrett Crochet, like Tanner Houck, who was showing Cy Young caliber stuff in the first half of the season until his arm started to get a little worn out because they pushed his innings. But now that he's gotten that season under his belt of throwing more innings at a time, now he's used to that. So now he feels acclimated to, okay, I can throw more innings each time I go out there and start now. So the growth of him, the growth of Brayan Bello, the presumed growth of Cutter Crawford, those guys are all going to produce at a higher level than they did in 2024, because now they have a year with Andrew Bailey's system under their belt. So they know his operation and the way that he works with them. And that's all good stuff. So they're going to win more games. And if you think about what happened this past year, they had so many injuries for literally the entire season in 2024, and they still finished the season at 500. Obviously, not that that is something that we as Red Sox fans should be striving for them to do. We want to see a lot more than that. But they finished the season at 500, right? Exactly average. And they were in the playoff conversation for a lot of the season. They were lingering around that last wild card spot for a lot of the season, and they didn't have a fully healthy roster, and they didn't have as talented of a roster, especially from a pitching standpoint, as they do now. Now, if I'm sitting here and looking at the roster right now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's good enough to win the division, because I do think in regards to that, they need to make a couple more moves in order for me to confidently say that roster has the capability of winning the AL East. However, I do feel like if they were to go out there opening day with the roster as it currently stands, that's a good enough team to where they could get a wild card spot. Not seeing them go super deep necessarily in the playoffs, but make the playoffs, which would be a huge step up from what we've seen over the last few seasons. So I think this roster as it stands right now, if nothing else changes going into opening day and they don't make any more moves to improve the roster, they are a playoff team to me, and most likely a wild card team. But they could be a team that could be in conversation to win the division if they make a few more moves that can really help solidify this roster as one of the best in the East. And that's something that I'm hoping they do, because many people in the front office mentioned going into the offseason that they hear the fans, they hear the frustration. Their goal is to try to win the division. And if that's legitimate, if that's what they really mean and that's what they want to do, they have to go out there and they have to be a little bit more aggressive still in terms of making a couple more moves. But if I'm looking at this Boston Red Sox team right now going into this upcoming season and where they stand, I feel like 2025 is going to be a better year for them, and fans aren't going to be as frustrated, and we're going to see them make the playoffs because they have the starting rotation that should hopefully help limit the runs scored from the opponent. And they got some good bullpen pieces to add in. I do think they could use another bullpen arm. Getting a solidified closer would really help me as a fan to feel better about where they're at with the bullpen right now, or even just adding another high leverage arm in general could really help solidify the bullpen. But the bullpen is going to be better than it was last year. Even just adding back guys like Garrett Whitlock and Liam Hendricks, guys who are going to contribute out of the pen, that alone is going to make the bullpen better in 2025. So they will win more games than they did in 2024. And to me, they make the playoffs. It's just a matter of where in the playoff order they are. And that comes down to whatever else they do this offseason. So we'll have to see what else they do to improve the team. But so far, I feel like they have done enough to make themselves a playoff team. It's just a matter of where they finish. Now, I do appreciate you, as always, tuning into Locked On Red Sox and making it your first listen today. Make sure right after this you check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, who has a lot of energy and will keep you updated on everything going on around the league. Very knowledgeable about the sport. I highly recommend. I've recorded shows with him before. He's super fun. You can find his show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to tune into that next. Like I always say, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.